What is truth? And how do we discern it? Is there a distinction between subjective truth and objective truth? And how do these concepts lead us to consider the existence of an absolute moral lawgiver, namely God? So to begin, let's define our terms. Subjective truth is based on personal feelings, tastes, opinions, varying from one another. It's like trying to decide if pineapple should go on pizza. And objective truth, conversely, is independent of personal feelings and universally applicable. Like 1 + 1 will always be 2. And the gravitational pull of Earth. We acknowledge the existence of right and wrong. Our daily lives are testament to this understanding. An example many can relate to is the universal agreement that helping someone in need is commendable. It's good. Whereas harming someone is not good and is reprehensible. C.S. Lewis insightfully pointed out that to make the claim that there is no objective truth is to contradict oneself. See, asserting the absence of objective truth in itself is an objective statement. And in this contemporary culture, moral values are often perceived as personal opinions, lacking significance beyond the individual. We live in a world of relativism where everybody thinks that their truth is the absolute truth. So your truth is right because you say it is, and my truth is right because I say it is. But this perspective is in stark contrast to the Christian worldview, to the Christian viewpoint, which asserts that moral judgments are not subjective, but are objective truths that we can discern. The psalmist states in Psalm 119, "All your words are true. All your righteous laws are eternal." Have you ever wondered where our sense of right and wrong comes from? If moral values objectively exist beyond human opinion, well, what could their source be? If actions such as stealing, lying, harming others are inherently wrong, not merely because what society dictates, but intrinsically inside, then there must be a standard beyond us that defines this. Despite cultural and historical differences, certain moral principles like fairness, compassion, respect for life resonate universally to everyone. And if these moral values transcend human subjectivity, then God is the most plausible explanation. God, being ontologically ultimate, the source of reality itself, sets the standard. Without God, objective moral values would not exist. Morality would be reduced to a byproduct of socio-biological evolution, like cooperative behaviors that you see observed in animal societies for survival. We wouldn't say a lion is murdering a gazelle because he's trying to hunt for food. And if an eagle comes down and snatches food from a fox or a coyote, we wouldn't say that the eagle is stealing it. He's only doing it for survival instincts. So see, without God, if there is no objective basis for right and wrong, then these moral values become just mere consequences of societal or evolutionary pressures. As one philosopher suggested, and I quote, "Without God, moral principles that govern our behavior are rooted in habit and custom, feeling and fashion," unquote. In a godless universe, who determines the morality of actions? How could one argue that the values of Adolf Hitler are inferior to those of a saint? Without God, the concept of morality loses its meaning. Let me give you a quote from a contemporary atheistic ethicist. He points this out. He says, "To say something is wrong because it is forbidden by God is perfectly understandable to anyone who believes in a law-giving God. But to say that something is wrong, even though no God exists to forbid it, it is not understandable. The concept of moral obligation is unintelligible apart from the idea of God. The words remain, but their meaning is gone," unquote. This means that it's impossible to condemn war or oppression or crime as evil. Nor can anyone praise brotherhood or equality or love as good. For in a universe without God, neither good or evil exists. And the Bible provides numerous verses that support the reality of the Christian God as the moral lawgiver. For instance, in the Ten Commandments in Exodus, it serves as a cornerstone for the Judeo-Christian ethical standards. Jesus summarizes the law with the greatest commandment in Matthew chapter 22, encapsulating the essence of moral law in love. Paul's letter to the Romans in chapter 2 acknowledges that God's law is written in our hearts, suggesting a universal moral law is instilled by God. Every good and perfect gift is from above, and that's from James chapter 1, pointing to God as the source of all that is good. The scripture is God-breathed and is useful for teaching, for reproof, for correction and training in righteousness. And that's from 2 Timothy chapter 3. And it's highlighting the Bible's role as a divine guide for moral living given by God. The laws of the Lord are perfect, reviving the soul, says the psalmist in chapter 19. And God's requirements are to do justice, love, kindness, and work humbly with him. And that's Micah chapter 6. See, these verses, among many others, present a clear picture of God as the moral lawgiver and underscoring the belief that moral truths are not arbitrary or culturally derived, but they're rooted in the character and the will of God. This divine moral standard calls for humanity to live in a way that reflects God's goodness, God's justice, and God's love. Therefore, considering the existence of moral objectivity and a universal recognition of moral truths that transcends cultural and subjective boundaries, the most plausible explanation for this phenomenon is the existence of a moral lawgiver, God himself. This leads us to the conclusion that because moral objectivity exists, it is reasonable to affirm that God exists. Hope you guys like this video. Please share, like, and subscribe. And if you want to have more of these videos like this, or you got more questions, please don't hesitate. Comment below so I can know what to talk about next. Until next time, this is Louis Cafresi. Take care.